Shay, Ma'at Hotep. This is The Truth May Hurt. My name is Raymond Witcher, and I will be your host. I'm going to give you part 2 of The Foundation of Racism. I want to get these done as quick as possible. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Josh at Boogie Brew. He makes an exceptional tea for those that are interested in organic gardening. I've used it for the last 2 years, and it's the season that people are getting their gardens together and everything. So go online. I've been trying to put a presentation together to show you how his product works and everything, so that you can see it's worth it. But he's a great guy. He's working with 2 other guys, John and TD. And they cover everything that you could possibly need from a garden, whether it is your favorite vegetables, your favorite fruits. If you're a medical marijuana patient and cannabis is what you need, these guys, they do an exceptional job. So I wanted to mention them because I talked to Josh this week, and it's just a great experience. Okay. And these guys, not only do they sell product, but they teach you how to make your own. Okay. It's just easy for me to deal with Josh and Boogie Brew, and he's so personable. We really bonded, I feel. So I want to give him a big shout out and mention him that if you are in the organic gardening, go online or go on YouTube and do a search for Boogie Brew, and then do a search for Boogie Brew live streams, and you can see some of his gardens and some of the products that they grow. I'm gonna talk to Josh and see maybe if he and I can do a joint presentation together, because the name of this channel is The Truth May Hurt. It says it may hurt, but it always doesn't hurt. And one of the things that we all need to do is be healthier. How do we get healthier? By eating healthier, by making sure the things we put in our body are worthy of being ingested in our body. Okay, we're gonna move right into this, and there's a couple things I wanted to go back over on this presentation that I missed. When I mentioned on part 1 that after God gave Moses the 10 Commandments, because the people did not want to, the reason that they built the golden bull is because they did not want to come out of the age of Taurus, the bull. Each of the astrology signs lasts 2,160 years, just to revamp. So the age of Taurus was over. When Moses came, it was in the age of Aries, the ram. So when he came back and found them that they had melted gold and built a golden calf, he said God told him to kill everybody. Go from the front gate to the back gate, kill every man, every woman, every child, every man's friend. And I forgot to tell you that the Bible says that 3,000 people fell dead that day by the hands and swords of Moses. Okay, so I wanted to point that out. I wanted to add that on. So God is not supposed to be a God of confusion. And he just gave Moses a commandment that says, thou shalt not kill. And a short time later, God gave him a command to say, kill 3,000 people. Just want to point that out. Okay, when we look at this picture, let me blow this one up a little bit bigger so that you can see it. See what I'm trying to tell you better. Okay, now look at the goddess Ma'at, and then you blow this up. Gorgeous. Okay, this is the goddess Ma'at. I want to show you a better picture of her. But what I want to show you is this picture. When I was showing you this picture, I think this is the god Tahuti. That's why I say I may get that wrong. This might be Tahuti with the bird head. But the reason they had the heads like this is to educate. And if you look here, I didn't mention what this is. So if you see the feather is on the right-hand side and the heart is on the left-hand side, the heart is lighter than the feather. Now, because the heart is lighter than the feather, he gets to go to heaven. But here's the creature, the animal that has the mouth of a crocodile, the body of a dog, and like this is supposed to be, this is the devil. This is the biblical devil. This is the creature that if your heart does not weigh lighter than the feather, he's going to carry you off to hell. Okay? So everything that the Bible is telling you about the judgment day, this is it. And the part I didn't tell you is after the dead has hard his weight less than a feather, he's been ushered into heaven. He's being received here. Here's God. Here's the goddess Moet. Here's the goddess, the other half of the god. But you remember the biblical story about the upper room? Right over top of them, that's the upper room that the Bible is talking about. Let me see. I think that's Acts 2. This Acts 2. Yes. So right over the head of God, he's sending them up into the upper room, and then they're passed on through into heaven. And if you can see at the top here, the ankhs are bigger. That's why I wanted to blow this picture up. Okay. Okay, now, let me see, is it anything? What else was I going to show you on this slide before I go to the next one? Okay. Social engineering. Okay. I want you guys, let me pause and I'm going to show you. Well, let me explain it to you first. The Vatican repudiates the doctrine of discovery, which was used to justify colonialism. The doctrine was invoked as a legal religious standing by Europeans who discovered new land and violently seized it from people who had been living there for generations. It has been cited in different arenas for centuries, including by the U.S. Supreme Court as early as 1823 and as recently as 2005. The doctrine of discovery is a document that the Catholic Church created that said all land that we discover, we have the rights given to us by God to take the land from the natives because they are not Christian. Okay, the doctrine came from the Papal's Bill in the 15th century. Now, if you go back and look at my videos, everything is on a timeline. The 15th century is when they were just coming out of the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages went from the year 500 AD to the year 1500, where they suppressed all information. They burnt down African libraries, destroyed books. Every place that they conquered that had religious literature, they took it and hid it in the bottom of the Vatican. In the bottom of the Vatican, they have over 5 miles of storage of African spirituality and literature, okay? The doctrine made its way into the United States legal system. You have to give me, I have to remind you, my vision is going bad and I refuse to have laser surgery. And the angle that I need to have this screen, it complicates things. So back in the 19th century, it was used as a precedent which gave people a sense of title to land that had not been owned with an official title of deed. See, when the Europeans came into America, nobody owned land. The Indians sold Manhattan to the Europeans for $14 and laughed at the Europeans because they were like, nobody can own land. Well, that's because when the Europeans came in, they changed the rules, made new laws, and they turned everything to a European government, which was, okay, you know, this land is ours now. You got to buy it. Okay. So what began as a religious decree in the 1400s then became the basis for a legal concept in the United States when the doctrine of discovery was invoked in an 1823 U.S. Supreme Court. You remember in part one when Dr. Claude Anderson said that the United Supreme Court was put in place to protect white supremacy. This is what it's telling you here in 1823 U.S. Supreme Court ruling that indigenous people had only rights of occupancy, not ownership over land they had long lived on. The land then was open for the taking. As a result of this being written into the American property law, see, this is what I'm saying. There had been no property law. The Indians, well, the natives who were us, because Christopher Columbus and all of these people say in their diaries, the first people they saw when they got here were black, like seen in Egypt, speaking the same language, following the same customs. Okay, so McCollum said, including citations as recent as a 2005 case in upstate New York involving the Indian Nation. It hasn't changed. Don't think they went out of business. Don't think that they don't want to dominate and rule everything, okay? Okay, I went over this, I think. Do you believe that most black nations can be poor and look alike while all European nations are rich from colonizing Africa and other places? Unless they are running a program. So what's the program? All right. Whose rule is it in the homes that in black homes that we're gonna go to church every Sunday? Moms or dads? It's moms. Because the Willie Lynch letter has trained women to train their young children from birth to be in the church, everything about Jesus, everything is going to enslave them. That's who's teaching it. In most places, the mothers. Colonization, Hellenization, and imperialism all remove our VIPs. Our VIPs are our values, interests, and principles, and impose European VIPs. We aren't educated to learn, we're educated to remember what they gave us. We went over the eugenics program. They have eugenics programs in the United States that specifically say that we will use the black churches to control the communities, and we will strictly control the black pastors so that we can be out of sight. And that's the damage that has been done through the church. I'm not here to please everybody. I know more people are not going to like what I say than what I say. But let me mention something to you. The vicar is the Pope. When he had double pneumonia and he had 2,000 people showing up at the Vatican every day to pray for him, where was he? He was in the ICU, running tests, taking medicine, and listening to the doctors. We're in the book of Mark, chapter 16, verses 17 through 20, all in red letters, meaning this is what Jesus said. He said, these are the signs that will accompany those that believe. You will be able to speak in new tongues. You will be able to pick up serpents, and when you drink deadly things, no harm will come to you. I can't find one believer that will drink deadly things to show that by them having faith in Jesus, no harm will come to them. Then it says, you will be able to place your hand on the sick and they will get well. And these are the signs that I want my believers to go out and show through faith that you have these powers. These powers are going to accompany you. And it doesn't say you will lay your hands on some of the sick, for a few of the sick. He said you will be able to lay your hands on all of the sick and they will get well. He doesn't say it has limitations. Okay? So I saw the Pope when he got out of the hospital a few weeks ago, they showed his first public appearance and he was being rolled up in a wheelchair. Why hasn't somebody placed their hands on him and healed his legs, his back? Okay? Yesterday on the news, I saw Pope Francis, and he spoke and he said, I want to thank all of the doctors that saved my life. He didn't mention Jesus Christ's name. He didn't mention God, the Father, the Holy Ghost. He didn't mention them. He thanked the doctors. Didn't mention God's name. All right, so let's go on. All right, what is this one? Okay, you can look up, the Catholics have told, you can look up Pope Leo X said, look at all the money the fable of Jesus Christ has made, their company. He said their company, not church. You can look that up. I might pull it up for you. I don't want this to go too long and I want to finish this. I don't want a part 3. All right? And you can read this. Now, you see over here what I have in red? The original, and it says this. Well, this is what it says. And you don't have to look it up. I copied it. Although the quote is commonly attributed without sources, documentation to Pope Leo X, it is believed to have originated in a satirical piece titled "The Pageant of the Popes" by a Protestant. And if you read on down, it says, and this is what it quoted: For on a time when the Cardinal Bernbus did move a question out of the gospel, Gospell. The original spelling of gospel was Gospell, because this is spell casting. Sorry if you don't like it. I'm here to tell you the truth. This is spell casting. All right. You can read the rest. I want to make sure I get everything done, and I have quite a bit to show you. Now, for those that say, want to tell you, you're not supposed to question the Bible. You're not supposed to question the pastor. You're not supposed to question God. Well, that's not what Scripture says. I'm pretty sure it's in the book of John. I couldn't find exactly where it was, but it says, okay, what this scripture says is, and this is a quote: question everything, and if you must, do it publicly. In this age of deceit, we should question the experts, the scholars, the scientists, and the academics. So, some will earn our trust by their response, and as their answers stand up to scrutiny, be determined to get at truth. So, in the book of John is telling you that Jesus said, question everything, question everybody. You can't trust anybody in this age of deceit. And if you look up the definition of the age of Pisces, the age of Pisces is defined as the age of deceit. The age of deceit, deception, guile, and trickery. That's what the age of Pisces is. Look it up. I can't make this too long, okay? So Jesus is telling you, in this age that I'm here, which is only going to be until the end of the age of Pisces, you got to question everybody. Keep in mind, Jesus never existed. But it's telling you, you're being lied to. And I can show you verses in the Bible where it says that too. I showed you this. Okay. I'm going to show you this. The first slave ship to sail into, the first slave ship to sail into Africa to transport slaves to start the transatlantic slave trade was named Jesus of Lubbock, the first British slave ship to arrive in Africa. The ship was chartered by Queen Elizabeth I to a group of merchants in 1563. Jesus of Lubbock was an early 19th century cataract built Well, you can read that. Okay. You can read these things. I'm putting it here. You can pause it and read it. I can't make this too long. I have a lot to show you. This isn't everything. Okay. So on the west coast of Africa in Ghana, that's where slaves were being shipped out of the west coast of Africa. And we've always seen the pictures of the dungeons and the 3 doors that they didn't feed the slaves, and they had to lose so much weight that they could fit through this door. And they get in another section and they'd have to lose so much weight they had to fit through this door. And the last door that they had to fit through was called the door of no return. And you were marched on the ship. The first Africans to be put on a ship, I think they were, because they changed everybody's name. I think the first man and the first woman were named Adam and Eve. Okay? You can read this. Okay? But I'm showing you that they had the slave ship named Jesus shipping you and selling you to slavery out of Ghana. And then on the east coast of Africa, they had Fort Jesus in Kenya. Fort Jesus is a fortress built by the Portuguese in the late 16th century, an old town of Mombasa, Kenya. Okay, so all of this is centered around Christianity. All of it is centered around the Bible. The Bible was created to perpetuate slavery. The Bible explicitly identified Africans as born under the curse of Ham to be slaves for life. So don't forget these things. Okay, here goes some verses that show how the Bible endorses and really established blacks as permanent slaves. And for those that say that, well, listen, slavery is mentioned 185 times in the Bible. And some people say, well, that's Old Testament. No, 150 times is mentioned in the New Testament, not the Old Testament. So that's 50 times. No, that's 150 times that one of these inspired men of God is saying Jesus said, slaves. Which one is it? 1 Peter 2:18 through 20. Here's what Jesus said. Here's what Peter says Jesus said. Well, you don't know Peter's last name. You don't know Moses' last name. You don't know Matthew's last name. You don't know John's last name. You don't know Daniel's last name. You don't know Luke's last name. You couldn't even take these men of God that he inspired to court to be a witness on your behalf that you've been a faithful Christian. Okay, but here's what Peter said, John said. You who are servants. Servants is another way of saying slave. Be good servants to your master. And verses in the Bible say, slaves, obey your masters as you would obey Jesus. Obey your masters on earth as you obey Jesus. So when it says be good to your masters, it's saying be good to your earthly God that owns you, that beats you, rapes you, and does be good to him. Not just the good masters, but also the bad ones. What counts? Now listen. Here's what has black people messed up. What counts is that you put up with it for God's sake when you are treated badly for no good reason. Put up with it for God's sake. There is no particular virtue in attempting punishment that you will deserve. But if you're treated badly for good behavior and continue in spite of it to be a good servant, that is what counts with God. Now listen, if you want to believe God said this to us, he inspired some men that said this, you got to question a lot of things about the way you think and what you believe. Okay? So, my God isn't a racist, a bigot, or a white supremacist, but these are racist statements versus. So, if God says these things, he's a racist, but God didn't say it. The men that wrote it are the racists. Do you believe your enslavers, your colonizers, your oppressors, those that took your VIPs, your values, your interests, and principles are gonna give you a book with a God that's gonna save you from them? No, it's telling you here that this God is telling you, don't want freedom. I don't care how bad they treat you, beat you, kill you, sell your children. Be kind to them. This is a slave indoctrination book for blacks. And it is a slave white supremacy book for those whites that want to be superior and supremacist over black people. That's what it is. All right. The King James Version of the Bible was released in 1611, and only 8 short years later, we were made slaves for life by King James, who was really Queen James, and Pope Innocent. It's permanent. Coincidence? I don't think so. Okay. King James started the Royal African Company to transport slaves during the transatlantic slave trade. Now look at this timeline. Now wait a minute. King James commissioned, it was either 47 or 50 men to retranslate the Bible. If you look up why did King James retranslate the Bible, one of the reasons is he felt that God had more authority in his kingdom than he had. So I'm asking you, who do you think these 50 men that King James ordered to retranslate the Bible, who do you think they feared more? King James or God? They feared King James more, because if they didn't do what was pleasing to the king, he'd cut their head off. All right, the James River in Jamestown, Virginia, the James River and Jamestown in Virginia are both named after King James. In the Willie Lynch letter, the slave owners said, we love King James and his Bible. Of course you love King James and his Bible. It gave you the right to own people, us. Make them your slaves for life. It gave you the right to beat us to death and kill us, rape us, do whatever you want to do, because we're not human. Well, per the Constitution, we're not human. Per the Bible, we have the curse of Ham, which is a lie. All right, when you look up the European Inquisitions, the Spanish Inquisition went from 1478 until 1834. This is when they were going around. Well, see, before, if you notice these dates, this is when they were going around through Europe, killing white Europeans that would not accept Jesus Christ. Okay, then they got to us. Okay. Okay, the term Negro appeared at least as early as 1829 when this is when the word Negro started being used. So God couldn't have told anybody that Negroes have the curse of Ham back in the timeline and period of BC, before Christ, when the Old Testament was written, before Negro was a word. Can't tell me that. The letter J wasn't invented as an alphabet until the year 1524. So it's no way there could have been anything that started with the letter J before the letter J existed. So it couldn't have been a Jesus, a Jerusalem, a Jericho, a Jeremiah, a Jacob, a John, a Jeremiah. It couldn't have been before there was a letter J. Do you believe a slave and a slave master can pray to the same God and God answer both of their prayers? And God be on time. You know how black people, well, God is good. God is good all the time. God is always on time. These are cliches. Okay? And we just feel so good when we say it. I'm going to wait on the Lord. You're being taught wrong. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm not trying, because all the way up until 5 years ago, I believed the same thing. But now that I'm outside of that third dimension and the circumference of the circle of what they indoctrinated me to, and now I'm in the fifth dimension and I'm looking back and I'm saying, wow, wow. How could I ever have believed that? Because I was taught that I didn't need to understand it. I didn't. You can't understand God. You know, when people get to the point when you ask them questions that they can't answer, one of the first things they're going to say is, you can't understand God. Yes, you can. If you get the middleman out of the way, you get the pastor out of the way, the pope, the bishops, all of them out of the way and out of your head. Let me ask you a question. Now, God inspired 4 men per the New Testament. Do you believe God stopped inspiring men? That these are the only men that God is going to talk to? No. That God is waiting for us to turn our frequency onto his frequency. Please go back and look at my video on spirituality, frequency, and vibration, and especially the last part, because that's when I go into Revelations 11 verses 1 through 9, and I reverse word search the words to the Hebrew word and then reread it. It's a totally different story. It's a beautiful story, but it's not the one that they taught you. Look up Reverend C.C. Jones, a Baptist pastor who wrote the instructions for Negroes in America and covered 5 key points. Teach Negroes that God made us to be slaves. Teach Negroes that God made whites to be their master. Now, I didn't write this, okay? And I'm not saying that all people are racist, because they're not. A lot of people that choose to be racist, they don't understand. See, the elites game, that 1%, wants to make outsiders believe they're one of them. That way they can get them to do their dirty work. So the skinheads, the Proud Boys, the KKK, all of them that believe they're one of them are finding out right now that they're not, because the majority of the people that have been fired by Donald Trump out of the government and DEI are white women. All right? Is to be their masters. Teach that the church can't go against what God has ordained. Teach Negroes that God allows slavery so Negroes can meet Jesus and be saved. Teach Negroes that God made us to live in poverty and get our reward in heaven. Now, I bet you can't find one black person that has really been going to church that hasn't been preached. Don't worry about what happens to you here. You're going to get your reward in heaven. Okay? You're going to miss heaven if you don't find it before you die, because that's what Matthew 6:23 says. It says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and all its righteousness, and all these things will be added on to you. What God asks you or tell you, he doesn't ask you, he orders you to seek heaven first. Would he tell you to seek something you couldn't find until you died? That's not a good question. I don't know what is. All right. So when we're talking about the Bible, and I'm telling you that the Bible is not historical, it's mythical. Look at what Acts chapter 17, verse 22 says in the King James Version. Let's see. Yeah, the King James Version is supposed to be the most accurately, most scrutinized Bible ever. And King James says, Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill and said, ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things ye are too superstitious. So when you read the Bible and you have so many different versions of the Bible, and they use different words, but when you're using a different word in the same verse of the same chapter, those words are interchangeable. It's just a different way of saying it. So when you go to Acts 17, verse 22 in the English Standard, it says, Paul stood in the midst of Mars and said, Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. Religion and superstition are the same thing. Superstition, having or showing a belief in supernatural influences, especially as leading to good or bad luck. Many superstitious beliefs and practices are connected with sneezing. Okay, so this is giving an example. Okay, just showing you, you're being tricked. Religion's definition: a belief in and worship of a superhuman power or powers, especially a god or gods. Jesus Christ, this mythical Jesus Christ, was never religious. Even in the concept of the mythical teachings of the Bible, Jesus Christ was never religious. And if you remember, the work that he did on earth was he went up against principalities, religions, and those that govern. Those are the things that he's supposed to be coming back to do that are really ours to do. So that's why, one of the reasons why I'm totally comfortable doing what I'm doing is because I'm going up against false religions, false belief, the principalities, and those that have led us astray. All right? Okay, we're gonna finish this up. I have information over here. You'll hear me say at the beginning, I'll say Ashe, Ma'at Hotep. Okay, and we've talked about Ma'at. And here's what it means. These are principles of living, okay? And the principles of Ma'at, which signifies cosmic order, justice, and truth in Egyptian mythology. Hotep translate to he who comes in peace, while Ma'at represents balance, righteousness, and harmony. I don't have harmony in here. Okay, in Egyptian mythology, Hotep name means the one who comes in peace. So when I say Ashe, I'm saying I'm coming with truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance. And when I say Hotep or Imhotep, I'm saying I come in peace. Okay? So that's what that means. So I want to go through these things and we're going to get out of here. This one is very important because this one relates back to part one when I was talking about the pineal gland. The pineal gland is what our third eye is, that we are taught, oh, that's evil. You see someone with the eye of Horus. This is the eye of Horus. When you see someone with the eye of Horus, people say, oh man, you into that devil work. They don't even know what it means. They just know what they have been told. And it's a big difference, okay? Why you shouldn't believe everything people tell you. This is what you need to believe. You need to do your own research. And here's what I'm going to show you. On the right, let's see, can I spread this up? On the right, the picture is of a dissected brain. The pineal gland sits in between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain. It is what joins the brain together. If you were to cut yourself right down the center and be dissected, this is what the inside of your brain would look like. Now, if you look at this and you look at what our ancestors carved in stone, it is the pineal gland. There's no doubt about it. And if you want to have, and you can see This is from my autopsy report because it's got the numbers on it. See, C45, 46, 48. Okay? But if you look at this pineal gland that our ancestors wrote, it is identical. It is that. Okay? So that's what I want to show you here. The pineal gland and the third eye. Notice that the picture on top left, the images, this is, okay, I was just explaining this. So I'm putting all three of these together here. The images are carved in stone by our ancestors, and the right side, the other brain, up the right side is our brain cut in half. It's the pineal gland. The bottom picture shows the pineal gland around the eye to show the pineal gland function, which our two eyes to remove the illusion. So God gave us three eyes. He gave us these two eyes that only look out. They never look in. These two eyes see all of the illusions. They show us our way into trouble that we can't see our way out of. And the Bible tells us don't trust these two eyes. Trust your third eye because it's your spiritual eye. It is the eye that gives you a connection to your creator, your ancestors, and expands your level of consciousness. You can't wake up until you start using your third eye because you're going to believe what you see and you're going to trust what you hear. Okay? Now, let me show you something. The symbol in African culture for the pineal gland is the pine cone. Now, this is the pine cone that's in Vatican City. Okay, it's in the center of Vatican City. So if you look at a lot, I may have it down in some slides below. If you look at the original African art, the symbol for the pineal gland was the pine cone. Okay? The center statue in Vatican City is the pine cone. Now, if I went in Vatican City and I told them that that's a satanic symbol, it's devil worship, they would probably want to stone me to death. But what do you think if I showed them that the pine cone is the symbol of the pineal gland? And the pineal gland is the symbol of the third eye. And you have the symbol of the third eye hanging in the center of Vatican City. You just didn't know that people were going to figure it out. Well, we'll figure it out. Look at what is on the staff of the Pope. A pine cone. That's a pine cone. Go back and watch my video on signs and symbols embedded in the church. These are the signs and symbols. All right, now, when the Europeans, Greek, came into Egypt and captured Egypt, the first symbol that they noticed and linked to the pineal gland was the pine cone. So when they made the staff of Osiris, they put the pine cone in the center. Okay? We went over this picture. This is our ancestors, and they left this in carving. This is the tree of life. This is the tree of knowledge. This is where the biblical story of the tree of knowledge and the tree of life came from. If you look right here in the center, you'll see this side of the man's head. It has, what's that peppermint candy that they have during Christmas with the red and white stripes? The candy cane. You see this candy cane? When you see pictures of the priests and the bishops, they have that same symbol in their hand. The same identical symbol. Okay? So, let me show you. Here's another picture of the Egyptian tree of knowledge. The biblical story says Do not eat. You can eat everything in this garden, but of the tree of knowledge, do not eat. So I'm asking you, what is the forbidden fruit? Now, they'll put you up a picture of an apple. And a lot of people believe that apples are evil and we shouldn't eat it because it's the forbidden fruit. Okay. Somebody asked Jesus, how will we know what kind of seed this is before I plant it? How can I tell what kind of seed this is before I plant it, Jesus? The mythical Jesus said, you will know the seed by the fruit that the tree bears. So if it's an apple seed, it'll produce an apple tree, and the apple tree will produce an apple. If it's an orange seed, the seed will produce an orange tree, and the orange tree will produce an orange. So if you have a tree that is a tree of knowledge, what kind of fruit would that tree produce? It would produce knowledge. So the Bible is telling you, I don't want you to know. And once you know, you'll be like God. You'll be equal to me. I don't want you knowing. I want you believing. This is the way the Bible teaches it. But I'm showing you here, the Egyptians taught that we want to feed you knowledge from the tree of knowledge. We want to feed you knowledge from the tree of life. I don't want you ignorant. This is the mother feeding her husband and her child from the tree of knowledge. This is the way it should be taught. And if nobody's teaching you that way, you need to leave. Okay? You need to leave. Now, you see here's the symbol of the same candy cane symbol that's on the tree of life. Here's the same candy cane in the hand of God. You see on the right hand, you see this of the hand of God? Well, I'm going to show you pictures of the Pope and priest standing with these same figures in their hands. What over that? Here are the verses where I was telling you about the astrology wheel. When Jesus said, well, you will find a man carrying a jug of water, follow him into his house. I think this is one. No. This is the verses where Jesus said, I will be with you until the end of the age. If you go to the King James Version, it says, teach them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. That's the King James Version. If you go to the New International Version, it doesn't say that. It says, and teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always until the very end of the age. Okay. Now, when you go to Luke 22, verse 10, this explains what I'm trying to show you here, where Jesus says, you follow the man that's carrying the water into his house. The house is the age of Aquarius. And Luke 22:10 says, and he said unto them, behold, when ye are entered into the city, there shall a man meet you, bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he entereth in. He's entering into the house of the age of Aquarius. He's telling everybody now that the age of me is gone, and now you follow into the new age of Pisces and this new religion. Now, when you look up the New World Religion headquarters open in Dubai in 2023, it's going to tell you that the New World Religion is called the Abrahamic Faith Family. Now, the whole foundation for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is all about tracing the lineage to descendants of Abraham. I've already shown you a previous presentation. If you, just briefly, Galatians chapter 4, verse 24, well, 22 through 24, it says, for it is written, that Abraham, his wife, the bondmaid, and their 2 sons, and you go down to verse 24, and it says, for these things which are all allegories, allegory means it's a made-up story for political reasons. And when I show people this, well, God wasn't saying that Abraham and his sons didn't exist. Well, what is the allegory? If it's not Abraham, go to chapter, Galatians chapter 4, and read verses 22 through 24. And somebody show me and tell me, what are the allegories that Paul is saying he's telling you? If it's not Abraham, Sarah, Hagar, Ishmael, and Isaac. And even if it's not them, if the Bible is historical, there should be no allegories. There should be no made-up stories. We went over what is race. We watched Dr. Anderson. Okay, I'm cleaning up some things here. Okay, you can read this page. The printing is small for me and my vision is bad. I don't want to stumble through it. I've kind of explained this to you about the 2 fish and how Jesus was supposed to have fed 5,000 people. That's a mythical story that is telling you of how you're going to be fed the story of Jesus Christ through the age of Pisces. The 2 fish are the age of Pisces. Okay, let's finish this up. Okay. Now, when you read here, Job chapter 38, verse 31, this is talking about the pineal gland. And here's what ties, here's something that directly associates religion with astrology. Okay. Job chapter 38, verse 31. Can you bend the chains of the Palisades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? What is Orion's belt? This is Orion's belt. Over here, the NASA symbol. This is Orion's belt. This is astrology. Okay, and if you go down here and just read 7 daughters of the Titans, they were pursued by the hunters Orion until Zeus changed them into a cluster of stars. This is astrology. Let me ask you something. When you read, do you believe in unicorns? Do you believe in dragons? Do you believe they existed? Why don't we have any skeletons of unicorns? Why don't we have any skeletons of fire-breathing dragons that the Bible talks about? If it's historical, where are they? Okay? All right. As well known, open clusters of stars in the constellation Taurus. Stars are visible to the naked eye, but are actually some 500 in the clusters. I can't really see this well. I don't want to stumble through it, but you can read this. This is showing you that in the Bible and scriptures, it's talking about astrology. It's talking about astrology. Okay, it's talking about numerology. It's talking about cosmology. Okay, people can separate it because you've never been taught to understand it. But once you read it and you have somebody explain it to you, you cannot separate this. All right, let's see. Okay, we're going to finish up with this. The Sabbath is not a repeating day of the week for every month. We're told that Sunday, S-U-N-D-A-Y, is the Sabbath. Okay? The real Sabbath is actually 7 days after the new moon. It's not Sunday. The Sabbath can be any day of the week, depending on what day of the week the new moon is. Whatever day of the week of each month the new moon is, the Sabbath is 7 days after that. Okay? All right. Whose sun is it shining in the sky daily? It's God's sun, but it's spelled S-U-N. Okay? I've had white people tell me, well, you guys ought to be glad that if white people hadn't found you and introduced you to Jesus, you'd still be worshiping the sun, the S-U-N. And I say, yeah, the S-U-N is real. The S-O-N, as the Son of God, isn't. So I don't need to thank you for introducing me to Jesus. All right? All right? Sunday is not spelled S-O-N-D-A-Y, it's spelled S-U-N-D-A-Y. The Catholic Church changed it because the sun, Ra, worshipers would not come to church on Saturday or the other days that the Sabbath fell on. They worship the sun, the original S-U-N. They would not accept the fictitious fable of the S-O-N. All right. All of this is astrology, cosmology, and astrotheology. Okay, I left out astrotheology. All right. To take it out of this disregard, it is what has us messed up. The laws of heaven, okay, are the laws of our universe and galaxy. And our links to this knowledge was left by our ancestors, and they still can't figure it out. Everything that I've shown you on the hieroglyphics, these are things that our ancestors left that we refuse to accept. But we accept it in a book that's telling the same story that our ancestors told, and they just changed the names. But our ancestors never told us these things were historical. These were all taught as mythical teachings to prepare the youth that once you become an adult, this is your work to do. You're supposed to do the work that Jesus has been taught to you. If it was taught right, you would see, doesn't Jesus say you'll do greater work than me? The work that I've done is not anything to what the work you will do. Well, when are you going to do it? I'm doing it. You don't like it. And wasn't Jesus persecuted? You're not going to like it. Okay? Persecution is a terrible thing. But when you're standing up for the right thing, and what you're standing up is going against what has been taught for centuries in all of your life, you're gonna hit that hard wall. It's kind of like you're gonna kind of feel like Paul Revere riding on that horse, telling everybody, 1 night by sea and 2 by land. The British are coming. You're gonna want to warn everybody, but people aren't gonna want to hear it. All right. So we're pretty much done with this because we went over the 42 negative confessions of Ma'at. I encourage you to stick with it. Don't trust me. Don't believe me. I want you to do what I'm doing. I'm out of the believing game. I'm out of the believing business. And I know it's a scam. Okay? I know that God, when preachers and people come, well, God told me to tell you. I tell them, no, he didn't. God didn't tell you to tell me anything. God wouldn't go behind my back to tell you jack about me. I know God better than that. He doesn't gossip. Why would God go to you to tell me, like God can't speak to me, that I need you to tell me what God said? It's a scam. No other animal is dependent on another animal to tell them anything. The animals of the herd, they teach them the laws of the land. It's God to teach them the laws of heaven. Okay? These things are what every generation passes on to the new generation, that they destroyed us from teaching our own. This is why We need to really educate ourselves so that when our children come home from school, from their indoctrination programs, that we can teach them the truth. And just tell them, look, learn everything that they tell you, but don't believe most of what they show you and tell you. Learn it so that you can pass the test. Then remember the things that I'm telling you about you and your culture and your history, and you will be fine. They won't be able to thief your money out of your pocket because they say you owe God. You don't owe God. Why are humans the only creation on earth that has to pay their way from the day they're born to the day they die to live on earth? God didn't make any other animal pay tithes. We've been scammed, and it's the Catholic Church behind there. Okay? If they believed what they're telling us to believe, the Pope wouldn't have went to the hospital and said, help me, doctor, nurse, run some tests so we can find out what's wrong with me and you can heal me. If he believed what he preaches, he would have went and had the cardinals come in there and put their hands on him, and he would have got his ass up out of that bed. And he would have told everybody, the believers healed me. Thank the believers. He didn't thank the believers. He thanked the doctor. Look it up. Look up the Pope thanks the doctors for healing him from double pneumonia. Man almost died. He wasn't calling out Jesus. Okay? He's the vicar. Nobody on earth is supposed to be closer to God than the who? The Pope. He's supposed to be God on earth that is sent here to lead us to heaven. And he doesn't have anybody around him that he's been told to believe that can put their hands on him and heal him. And he's in the Vatican. He's surrounded by priests and nuns. Don't forget the nuns. You know what they're doing to the nuns. They're not virgins. There are a lot of, and you can look this up. There are Catholic churches and Catholic institutions where they have uncovered unborn graveyards from the abortions of the nuns. I guess they go into that little closet, you know, they have that little closet where two little dirty men go in, and one sits on one side, one sits on the other, and they have this little petition, they're like a door, and they slide it open, and they sit in there and talk to each other. And one priest confessed his sins to the other priest. He tell him, you know, Father, I raped young boys. Father, I had sex with the nuns and she got pregnant. And the priest on the other side says, forgive you, son. You say 10 Hail Marys and 5 Our Fathers and all are forgiven. It doesn't work that way. They created that so that they could find peace within themselves for the evil that they do with immediate forgiveness and not even have to apologize to the person that they have hurt. It doesn't work like that. You should forgive, and God forgives those who sincerely seek forgiveness. And if they were seeking forgiveness instead of going in that little dirty room, that little closet, confessing to another little dirty man that did the same things that you've done, and asking him to forgive you, you'd be going to the person or the parents of that child saying, look, I did a terrible thing, and I'm really sorry for what I did. And I raped your son. I impregnated your daughter. And I had sex with your wife. And I want you to forgive me. You think that man has that kind of heart? No. Because he knows that a lot of these people are not going to turn the other cheek. They're going to go for eye for an eye. So all of these things, well, you got to forgive. You got to turn the other cheek. Well, the Bible says an eye for an eye also. Let me choose whether I want to turn the other cheek or whether I want to take an eye for an eye. Okay? The eye for an eye is used by people who say, I have the right to take an eye for an eye. But the black people, man, they'll tell you in a minute. You're supposed to turn the other cheek. I am not turning the other cheek. Okay? My God didn't make me to be abused. I'm going to keep it real. But this finishes it up for part 2. I hope you're getting something out of this. We're up to 97 members, which is pretty good in 4 months, considering this is probably one of the most taboo channels on YouTube. But I'm doing it for the purpose that when my clock runs out, my daughter, my son, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great can get educated from birth so that they don't fall into this indoctrination trap. I don't think there's anything else that I want to say other than thank you. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'm going to say Ashe and have a great day.